Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching The Naturalist Capitalist, and I'm your host, Reed Coverdale. And I've got a special guest on the show. He's the second guy that I've had on that I'm actually going to be able to vote for. I've got John Molnar, who's representing Utah's 4th Congressional District. He's running as a Libertarian. How's it going, John?
It's going good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I actually got to meet you in person at Spike Cohen's event about a month ago. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you were originally from California. You moved here at the age of 9, and you've served overseas. So just kind of give us your life story as condensed as you can, and why you think you could be a good representative for us in Congress because of those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, so you kicked me off with saying that I was from California. That's true. I was originally from San Diego, small town called Fallbrook. It's on the back gate of Camp Pendleton. It's pretty much where all your avocados come from in the United States. If they're grown here, they come from where I was born. But yeah, we moved to Utah when I was about 9 years old. So I actually grew up for a lot of the time in Orem. That's where I went to high school. And immediately after graduating high school, I shipped off for the Army. So, I had that summer and then I was gone. I had my 18th birthday in basic training. I was part of the military intelligence community, deployed to Iraq at the age of 19, got out of the Army in 2014. And then I just kind of was focusing on things that I wanted to do myself. I started off with culinary school because I didn't like college, and culinary school wasn't paying enough. So I ended up moving over into the finance world. And for the last little while, I've been doing investing in equities and real estate for myself, not working for anybody else. That's been fantastic, working from home in my underwear. And while I was trying to do all that, I just really wasn't happy with the way the government was handling everything. I joined the military as an idealist. We have people who join the military for a lot of different reasons, especially when I joined in 2008 because it was the recession. A lot of people just joined because they needed a job. Whereas I joined because I wanted to protect this country against things like 9/11, all the stuff that we've seen growing up. And I wanted to help protect this country, be that type of soldier who stood for defending the people and the Constitution. And then come to find out, the government was a lot worse than the terrorists. So it was time to get involved in politics. I was actually on my way out of the country. I was done. I was fed up. I was like, nah, fuck this. I'm out. And I met my wife when I was coming through Utah. She wanted to stay here in the country and for a little bit longer. So I decided, well, if I'm going to stay, I got to run. I got to try and help fix this stuff because just staying here isn't going to cut it. And so that kind of leads us into where we are today. And the reason I thought Congress would be a good fit is because of that fact that I was in the intelligence community with the military. I already have experience dealing with international relations. That was part of my job while I was in the intelligence community, was dealing with high classified information, dealing with international relations, developing and maintaining strategic and tactical relations with foreign entities, things like that. So that's some stuff that Congress does get involved in. When you talk about state and local, that's not anything that they do. They have state and local has nothing to do with the international community. And that's stuff that I have experience in. So I wanted to find a place that experience would apply to the most. And that came down to Congress, given my age constraints, because I'm under the age of 35 to run for president. So Congress seemed like a good fit. And here we are.
Yeah. So you're 28 years old.
I was 28 when I started this. I'll actually be 30 in about 2 weeks.
Okay. So you're 30. One of the interesting points you bring up is that there should be age limits for people in the government. Right now we have 2 senile septuagenarians running for president, and Trump has always been rude and Biden's always had gaffes. But if you look at their speeches from even 10 years ago or their interviews, they're obviously way more coherent than they are now. So it's a very obvious downward spiral. So you want to talk about that a little bit? Why you, what would the age limit be? How would it work? And why do you need it?
So the way I phrase it through my campaign a lot of the time is that I'd like to see, I'm sick and tired of seeing people moving to DC who should be moving to Florida. So, and I do that just because, you either win people over by making them laugh or making them cry. I like to make people laugh. That's just part of my personality. But really, it's a little more serious than just a joke. It's a way to have some fun. It's something that is serious that we should be talking about. And that is that we have a double standard in our politics when it comes to age constraints, because we have a minimum age requirement for every single office.
Right.
And almost none of them have a maximum age limit. And so now we've got people who are in office for a very long time being called career politicians, like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. These are people who are kind of the inspiration for a lot of people when wanting to talk about term limits. And we talk about term limits and how long they should stay in office, but we never mention the age. And that's one of the things that gets a little concerning to me, because it's a double standard when you have a minimum age requirement and you don't have a maximum age limit. And a lot of people are starting to see the need for that, especially with things going on with Joe Biden. You know, we can talk about Trump and Joe Biden together. They're both roughly around the same age, but there seems to be this concern with a lot of people that Joe Biden is being abused because of his age. He's being taken advantage of because he's older. Obviously, it seems like there's something going on with him. And so there's a lot of people starting to talk about this stuff now, which is good, because in the beginning I was getting bashed for it, called an ageist, and that I hate old people, which is not true.
Right.
You know, you want to talk about, well, we got to take care of old people. And these people that have been in office for so long have always been talking about how they're going to take care of old people, and they never do. They just make it worse. Social Security has issues up the ass, is about to disappear if we don't take care of it. And that was handled by these people who are so old that they supposedly know and understand the old people, when clearly they've just been looking out for themselves. So the way that I see it in implementing the age limits is I put them at 65. And that just comes from the fact that our government and our society tend to have an understanding that 65 is around the age of retirement. And so that wasn't trying to just take any arbitrary number. It was just what is considered retirement in the United States. It's about the age of 65. Now, obviously, that might end up getting negotiated out to 70. That's a possibility. But 65 should be our starting point. And that should be our starting point because that's just considered to be around the age of retirement. So if it's good enough retirement for the military, it's good enough retirement for people to take out their 401ks, start using Social Security, it's good enough retirement to get the hell out of public office.
I like that. So something that's very obvious throughout your message, throughout your website, when we hear you talk, is aggravation with current government officials. So I want to talk about Ben McAdams. I'm new to Utah. I just moved out here from New Hampshire. So I don't actually know much about him or how he's been as our representative here. So why don't you tell us a little about the race coming up, who your opponents are, who the incumbent is, why they're not good?
Okay. Yeah. So in my race, there are 4 candidates on the ballot. Only 2 of them will be in the debates. Thank you, Debate Commission, for those god-awful rules. Okay. So the people that I'm running against are, first and foremost, is Ben McAdams is the incumbent. Now, before becoming a member of Congress, he was actually the former mayor, I think, of Salt Lake County. His local politics, different story. Okay. They're not, in my mind, they're not quite relevant to Congress. It just, his local politics, we look at Congress as kind of a stepping stone a lot of the times in this country, and same with the president, where politics is a ladder, essentially, for you to climb, Congress being one of the next high points before you go for president. Everything's a bit of a stepping stone or the next rung on the ladder. I don't see it that way. There's a big difference between Congress and local. Ben McAdams' experience as local has almost no correlation to what he'll be able to do in Congress, because they deal with completely different things. And a lot of times in Congress, you're starting to get into classified information that he has no experience in, obviously isn't able to handle anything with it. You get into things like national security and things like that, that local, state and local just don't deal with. They don't deal with the national concerns. They don't understand the concerns of international community and international relations. So his experience before that, no relevancy for me. What he has done while in Congress has been concerning, though, because of the fact, to me, that he keeps going back and forth on where he stands. There's not really a way to find some consistency. He tries to talk about how he's independent of the Democrats, even though he is the one Democrat in Utah that we have in Congress. And he doesn't follow Nancy Pelosi, but his voting record is just kind of all over the place. For example, he'll talk about how we need to support the troops, how we need to take care of them and protect them. Okay, he's very big on wanting to talk about the veteran community and the military community and taking care of us. One of his big points was getting a 3% pay raise for the military this year when voting on everything to do with the Department of Defense. He voted for he got a 3% pay raise for the military, but failed to bring them home from Afghanistan. Actually voted to keep them in Afghanistan when he could have brought them home. So you want to tell me you care about the troops? Great. But when you leave them in Afghanistan, I don't think you really care about caring about the troops.
Right.
Most of us want to come home. And if you really care about the troops and protecting them, quit putting us in the way of danger for a Congress that has no intention of winning that war to begin with. And then there's been other things as well. He voted to impeach Donald Trump. I didn't quite agree with the reasoning on impeaching Donald Trump, but then it got even worse with Ben McAdams when he had voted to impeach Donald Trump, but voted against reining in the Presidential War Powers Act.
Right.
So you've got a congressman who actually thinks this president is so corrupt, abusing his power, he needs, and then votes not to curb the war powers of that very same supposedly corrupt president.
Right.
So those are some of the things that I've had problems with Ben McAdams. There just seems to be a lack of consistency. You know, we've got the Democrats have been talking about medical marijuana and trying to help out with ending the drug war for so long now. And they had the chance September, actually, was their chance to vote on the MORE Act, which would have legalized marijuana. Now, I disagree with some of the things of taxation in the MORE Act, but I support it overall because I'd rather deal with fighting the taxes on it than dealing with fighting on getting people to not be arrested for smoking a plant that makes them happy. And so the Democrats completely dropped the ball on that MORE Act this last month. They had the chance to vote on it. They decided not to because they're too afraid of looking too critical of law enforcement during this election year. Probably big pharma as well. So Democrats aren't willing to take on big pharma or law enforcement to end the war on drugs. That's another thing I got a problem with. And then we move on to my Republican challenger, which is Burgess Owens. He's a former player of the Raiders. I think there are a few other teams that he played for in there. And then I don't know what else he's done. It doesn't seem like he's done very much. Seems like he's got a lot of problems. You know, that happens to a lot of us. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure why some guy who's played a game getting way overpaid for it thinks he's qualified for Congress. You know, playing in the NFL has no relevancy to politics.
Right.
You're an athlete. That's great. It has nothing to do with knowing anything about politics in any regard. So the guy, I'm not too confident in he actually knows what he's doing, and he's kind of cemented my confidence in my assessment of that just because of how many times he's stolen my talking points and tried to pass them off as his own. You know, one of my talking points has been a direct attack on one of his, because originally he was running on, we need to take Utah values to DC. And so as soon as he started running with that, I started putting out stuff saying we don't need Utah values in DC. We need DC values out of Utah. Well, I found out a month ago he picked that one up. And he's been running on that one. And that's just one of the examples of stuff that he's taken from me. So with that guy, I don't know. He's got a lot of issues, it seems like. And but I mean, he's taking my stuff. So if he wants to run on my platform and take it, then I guess that's less work for me to do.
Yeah, you can consider your mission accomplished if he is taking away your ideas. You know, that's a good thing. So
right, and it saves me putting on a monkey suit. So all right.
Yeah. There you go. So something I like about your platform, it's really holding the government to the same standards that we have to live with. So one of the things is making them retire at the same age, like you just pointed out, but also you have a point about how they should have the same health insurance that we do. And then there's something about how they should have the same median income as the people they're representing. So just give us a down low on what measures you would like to see put on Congress to hold them to the same standard of living as everyone that they're representing.
Right. So I'm going to touch on the healthcare one first, since you started on that one. I'm going to tweak it a little bit because it's not, my proposal isn't for the Congress to have the same healthcare as us, we the people. It's for them to have the same healthcare as the veterans. All right. The healthcare for the men and women who fight our wars should be good enough for those who send us to war. That's my feelings on it. Now, The reason I go that route is because Congress is constantly talking about healthcare, Medicare for all, no Medicare for all, get rid of Obamacare. We need to keep Obamacare. We need to fix the VA. We don't need to do anything for the VA. There's all kinds of stuff all over the board. And at the end of the day, the big thing that this has to do is government and healthcare. Well, you want to see what the government does in healthcare? The best example of it is the Veteran Affairs hospital systems. Okay, and they're a disaster. I've been in them since 2014, and I have huge problems with the VA. I've had issues with them. They scare the shit out of me every time I go in because of how many times they've messed up. Like I had a procedure this week at the VA hospital that I had to get done. I've been waiting 6 months on, and the entire time I was just wanting to cancel the appointment because I wasn't sure I was going to come out alive. That's how little trust I have in the VA. Thanks to my experience with them. So the goal was to get Congress into the VA because they push this healthcare system on the rest of us veterans. And they always talk about what's going on with it when really they don't know. They show up once a year at most for a dog and pony show, and that doesn't cut it. If we need to get them into the VA themselves so that they have to actually have their own healthcare on the line the same way that we do. That way when they see stuff coming up in the VA, because if you spend long enough in a VA, and by long enough, I mean probably about an hour, you're likely going to hear somebody yell at something because they're getting mistreated about something, whether that's Agent Orange from the Vietnam vets, TBIs from the Iraq and Afghanistan vets, whatever the case might be. I've heard a lot of it. And like the reason I talk about this is because of how often I hear this stuff just sitting in the waiting room waiting for my appointments. So we get the politicians in there so they actually see what's going on with the veterans. They have to actually live with it themselves. Their own health care is on the line. Now, whatever decisions they make for us vets, we know it's probably going to be a little bit better thought out because at least it's going to affect the politicians the same way. Now, that same thinking applies to everything else, and that's where I get into the pay policy change for Congress and president and everything else. We're using Congress as the example a lot of the time because that's the position I'm running for. Congress gets paid $174,000 a year starting. That's your starting pay. The average, or well, not the average, the median household income for Utah's 4th district, the seat I'm running for, the last numbers I could check, now these are pre-COVID, so we're going to have to redo the math once COVID goes down and everything settles. We're going to have to redo the numbers. But using the pre-COVID numbers that I could find, the median household income for Utah's 4th district is $70,000 a year, roughly. I think it's about 72. The unemployment rate is about 3%. Okay, so let's take 72,000 minus 3%. That brings us down to about $68,000 a year. That would be the pay that Congress gets paid under my proposal. Instead of $174,000 a year, they get knocked down to the median household income of their voters minus that same unemployment rate. So that way, every single decision they make that affects the economy affects their paycheck directly in reflection of how it's going to affect us. That way, if they do something that brings the economy down, creates a higher unemployment rate, like say go through insane lockdowns for COVID-19 and kick 40 million people into unemployment, that unemployment number will affect their paycheck. So that now they're actually losing their own money to try and install a motivation factor for actually implementing change immediately and not 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
That way, it's just a performance-based pay package. It kind of self-selects what good and bad policies are going to stay and what needs to be changed, where we need to do course corrections, and then rewarding the politicians for when they do a good job. Because right now, Congress's pay is solely dictated by the vote of Congress. This is like if you were to go to your employer and tell them, hey, today I decided I'm getting a $10,000 a month raise, and they have to pay you for it. How long would your employer want to keep you? They wouldn't. They'd want to fire you immediately. Well, I think that's what a lot of us are thinking with Congress. We're getting sick of seeing this stuff with them getting paid so much for absolutely doing nothing because most of their job has been outsourced to the White House. So bring their pay down to a performance-based pay package that self-selects, does it automatically. We don't have to do anything, and it takes away the power from Congress to raise their pay by doing anything other than actually raising ours first. If they want more money, they got to get it to us first.
Yeah. Mike Lee, our senator from Utah here, he made a tweet a few days ago that caused a shitstorm on Twitter, and it was
democracy
about
versus
democracy. Yeah. And it was basically that rank democracy is not what our government is supposed to be set up as, and he's right. But what we have now is way worse than rank democracy. We have tyranny of the minority. I mean, instead of 51% deciding everything. We have Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, and the Supreme Court basically running our government. So how do we remove that? How do we get it back to a representative system? I like your ideas about pay. How do we even get that initiative passed, though? Because we have so much control centralized at the top. There's no way to want to change anything,
Yeah, and that's going to be the really hard thing, because I am running on, I don't think it's very radical, but it seems the politicians do. And I'm guessing that's because I'm going after things like their pay and benefits. So to me, it doesn't seem that crazy. I'm not trying to take any money from anybody else. I'm not trying to raise taxes. I'm not trying to take away land. I'm not trying to ban your cars. I'm just trying to say the politicians should get paid less, and their health care shouldn't be so gold standard-ish. And apparently that's made me pretty radical to the politicians. But it's going to be a hard thing to push through because of that. Because the politicians are going to look at every single one of these things and go, that is crazy because that affects my paycheck, my benefits. You want to take away my retirement? Yes, Mr. Congressman, I do. I want your retirement to be Social Security the same as every other American. You're free to go get some other one on your own, but the only thing you're getting is Social Security from us, the people. Now, the big thing that I see trying to do to make this happen is you got to have somebody be the guinea pig. You got to have a showcase for these policies to work, for people to start getting them, or for people to start wanting them to be pushed more broadly. And so that's why my one campaign promise throughout this entire thing has always been that I would voluntarily abide by my pay performance or by my pay proposal for Congress, because that's the one thing that I voluntarily pretty much can do on my own, aside from go to the VA while I'm in Congress. I mean, that's going to the VA stuff I do normally anyways, so that hasn't been one that I think needed to be mentioned. But abiding by the pay myself voluntarily. So that way, instead of every other member of Congress in Utah getting paid $174,000 a year, you got one that's only getting paid, say, $68,000 a year. Now you start having people hearing about that. Now they're starting to talk about that. Well, wait a minute. There's this guy out there who isn't making 2 to 3 times more than I do. He doesn't drive a Tesla or a Mercedes S-Class. He drives a Camaro, and it's a V6. And he makes $68,000 a year, and he still gets the job done. Why can't the rest of them make that much and do it? A lot of the talk on pay is it's to keep corruption out of politics. Well, how well has that worked out?
Right. Yeah. I mean, one stereotype about libertarians that I hate that's always put on us is that we don't represent the normal person. We represent like the rich people because all we care about is money. But I mean, that's totally not true. And if anyone was listening to what you'd say, they'd realize, no, we just want the government held to the same standards as the people.
Right.
And something that really irks me is that people look at the government as an extension of humanity. It's like something outside of the private sector, something outside of the laws of nature, basically. Like the government is this thing that can just give us whatever we want. It's this thing that it's like a supernatural idea somehow. They think the government can supply things without taking them away from other people. They think they can just snap their fingers and make things happen.
Right.
And that kind of brings me into the next thing I want to talk about. It's Sunday morning right now, and neither you or I are in church.
Mm-hmm.
And, I am, like you, a self-proclaimed atheist. And what led me there, I was raised as a Christian, but what kind of led me there was the extreme hypocrisy of the church. The idea that the church knows how to run your life better than you, that you're supposed to give so much money to the church that, you're supposed to follow this certain set of rules and then you're good to go. And I mean, I finally had enough of it and re-examined what I believed, realized I really didn't believe any of it, and got to where I am today. But I kind of went through the same phase with the government, because the government is treated a lot like the church by a lot of people. It's like a holy, supernatural force that you can't criticize, or that you need in order to facilitate certain things. And just like the church is just people like you and me who have more authority because of the set of rules they've laid down and the intimidation they've put on other people, I don't see how the government is any different. I mean, it's the exact same thing. And a lot of people who are self-proclaimed atheists, a lot of them are kind of hardcore leftists, and they're totally against the church doing any of these things. But then when it comes to the government, they're totally fine with it.
Right.
I just find that so backwards. So I know you're on the same page as me. How do you tie your belief system into your politics? Is it kind of the same way I just described, or how would you put it in your own words?
I mean, to an extent, I would say it's probably kind of similar, because in my mind with politics, everything comes down to, if we're not free to be an asshole or whatever else the case might be, you're not free at all. It doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. If you're not free to have your own opinions and pursue your own course of happiness, whatever the case might be, as long as you're not bothering me, who are you really? Why would I really care? And if I'm going to care about something that doesn't bother me, and the government can do something about that, then what happens when somebody that I don't want to have control over what I do suddenly cares about what I'm doing and uses that same government power to then go ahead and stop me from whatever it is I'm doing that they seem to care about that doesn't affect them? Now, my religious beliefs are different. In the fact that I'm a pretty hardcore atheist. I'm pretty convinced in that. There's some other stuff that gets into it that I don't really talk about because it just gets complicated at that point. I mean, my religious beliefs can get into a huge multi-hour long talk on its own. But, me being a firm atheist, the way I see it politically and that I've been talking about is that if we're not all free to practice our religions, then none of us are. Because I've heard it throughout my campaign even. I've been talking with like Republicans who will say that, we can't allow a non-Christian into office. And that kind of stuff. All right, you don't want a non-Christian into office, but what if I was to say the same thing? What if I said I don't want a Christian in office? That doesn't really do anybody any good. If we're starting to pick and choose which religion's going to win over the other, we got to come together and say, look, we all just need to practice our beliefs, whatever that case might be. And COVID-19 should have been that year that showed everybody that religion is all in this together. Regardless of if you're an atheist, a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, or whatever else the case might be, all of our religions got shut down except mine, because I'm an atheist. I don't go to church. So mine was the only one that didn't get shut down, and I was the only one out here pretty much screaming off the top of my lungs that people should be allowed to go to church and pray if they want to. I don't care if you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a pagan, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever the case might be, you should be free to practice your religion, because if you're not, then I'm probably not either. And unless we're all free to practice our religions, then none of us are. So I don't know. Politically versus religious beliefs get a little bit different, but yeah, it's crazy because you've got people talking about their beliefs in politics that don't apply the same way. So, thanks, babe. Anyways, that church stuff pissed me off pretty bad this year.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of Democrats and a lot of leftists that claim to be atheists and just replace that simply by big government. And that was a big reason why when I left the Republican Party, I didn't go to the Democrats. I came over to the Libertarian Party partly because of that, and partly because of a lot of other stuff. But I mean, when you replace atheist and then you just replace that belief with big government, you're not really an atheist.
Right.
You're just giving atheism a bad name, because atheism is a lack of belief and instead rather a focus on reason. And you can't be focusing on reason when you're just taking faith and belief and taking God out of it and then putting it right back onto government. Yeah. That's not atheism, that's statism.
Right. It's just another form of religion. So
exactly. And that's kind of what our government has become. And along with science as well. Science used to be a field of study that was to be questioned constantly and it has now turned into the same as religion, where science is. It used to be that science is questions that may never be answered, and now it's the same as religion and being answers that may never be questioned. So.
Well, to close out, why don't you just tell us what we can do other than vote for you, which is definitely what I'm going to be doing. But how can we help your campaign? Do you need donations? Do you need more publicity? Do you need people to sign wave? What should we do, and how can we do it?
We need more of everything, pretty much. So the big thing really that I always talk about this year, because COVID's been hard on everybody. And so we talk about donations and things like that. Those are things we normally need, but it's a tough year for a lot of people financially. So if you can't donate, the one thing that everybody can do real easily, and this is why I like to go with it because it doesn't take much of your time, is just to share things on social media. Help boost those algorithms so that the message gets out there. Social media is largely becoming the main way of how we all communicate. So whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on Facebook, whether on YouTube, I'm even on Instagram a little bit, but that's more like personal stuff. So Instagram might not be the better one to follow me on. But I mean, if all you can do is just like and share the posts or the pages, that's a huge help in and of itself. Another thing that could possibly be done, I mean, we got the debates coming up on Monday night, tomorrow, actually. So if you guys want to hound Utah Debate Commission and tell them that they should have all ballot qualified candidates on that debate stage. I'm seeing some calls for that already, even from some of Ben McAdams and Burgess Owens supporters, that they want to see all the candidates on the debate stage, even if they don't support us. So that's something that could be done as well. Aside from that, donations are always welcome. I do have T-shirts and some signs still, so if people want them, they can reach out and we can help get you a yard sign or a T-shirt. That can definitely work. So there's some ways that people can help out as well. Yes, that shirt. I actually got it on as well. If you can see it in my screen, if it's not still frozen.
All right. Well, you guys heard him. What's your website address so people can go find out about you there?
So the hardcore website address is Molnar for Utah.home.blog, and that 4 is the number 4, and Utah is spelled out. So it's my last name, the number 4, Utah.home.blog. That's the website, or you can find me on Twitter at just type in my name, or the handle on Twitter I think is at Gear6A is an alpha. Same for Instagram on that one, and then YouTube and Facebook are both Molnar 2020. So you can find me on either of those ways, all 5 of them. I think those are.
All right, I'll put the links in the description, and if you guys live in his district like I do, definitely vote for this guy, and let's help him get over the top. And I want to thank you for coming on, John. It was a good conversation, and I wish you the best of luck.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.